So if all you have is a Facebook page, and this happened back in like probably 2021, my nonprofits, we did social media management at the time. They all had incredible engagement on their Facebook pages. People, everything got seen and liked and, commented on. And then Facebook switched their algorithm. And suddenly none of that stuff showed up for those people anymore. At that point, you had to rely on another asset to be able to promote your company. You can't control the way that those businesses decide to unfold their next move. And you also can't control the way that they display your content.
Context is everything. It's easy to think that if you have a salesperson and that salesperson is actively frustrating potential clients to the point where they never consider hiring you, that you'd fire that salesperson. But what if your website is doing it? Would you fire your website? You should. That's why I'm so excited about this interview with Monica Pitts that I did. She's going to tell you how you can save hours per month by making your website a member of your team. Now, that saving hours per month sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? We spoke for over 2 hours, and you are getting the best parts of that conversation. We cover everything from mindset to automations, and of course, we cover tools. I want you to look for a few top takeaways from the interview. Number one is that your website doesn't need to just be a brochure site. It can actually take work off of your plate. This is why you need to treat it like an employee and not just a static asset. But you should be cautious about relying too heavily on third-party automation tools like Zapier. While I love Zapier, you should consider native integrations first for faster processing and a better user experience. Not to mention, fewer links in the chain are less likely to break. Finally, a website is crucial for your business. If you offer a reliable source of information compared to social media platforms, then your website can serve as a long-lasting marketing approach versus social media, which is more ephemeral. Social media is great to show people you're alive, but you really need a website to attract customers. I think that this was such a great conversation. I know you're going to love it too. You can find it in all of the show notes over at streamlined.fm/418. And if you want to hear Monica and I talk even more about automations as well as various website building platforms, you can become a member. Again, that's all going to be at streamlined.fm/418. Welcome to the Streamlined Solopreneur, a show for busy solopreneurs to help you improve your systems and processes so you can build a business while spending your time the way you want. I know you're busy, so let's get started. All right, I'm here with Monica Pitts, the founder of May Create Design, and I'm so excited because while we did recently rebrand the name, we will be talking about web stuff today. Monica, how are you?
I'm very excited to talk about web stuff today. It is my favorite geeky topic of all time.
Yes, likewise. For longtime listeners, they know that I was a web developer for 20 years, but since moving into the podcast coaching space, I try not to write my own code. I want to offer solutions for my audience that doesn't require knowing how to program. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about this to you today, because I've talked about websites a lot in the past iteration of this show, but through a very different lens. So let's start here. What is a website in 2024?
I feel like a website in 2024 should, A, not be a pain in your butt, and it should be a working member of your team. If it's just a brochure that hangs out 24/7, then, that's not terrible if that's all you need as a member of your team. But I like to build websites that actually solve problems for people and create time for them in their day, so that way they can focus on other things that maybe can't be solved as easily by something like a website.
Gotcha. So for those who don't know, a brochure site is basically just like 5 static pages, right? It's like home, about, contact, services, whatever, right? Like the the basics, right? If it's a restaurant, it's like menu, but then like the menu is a PDF you have to download anyway. When you say like working member of your team, do you mean like it should do stuff? Is this like LMS, e-commerce site? Are you thinking more than that?
Well, not every single business needs to teach or sell something online. So I like to think about it like, what are the processes that you do over and over again in your business? And how can you leverage your website to streamline those processes for you? So for example, we have a client that is a nursing staffing company. And they have to get lots and lots of paperwork from their staff members. And so one day I was like, why are you collecting it all as papers and then scanning it in and then submitting it when instead you could have them fill out a form and have it automatically either turn it into a PDF for you if that's the format it needs to be in, or just have it save it someplace where you can find it later, or just put all the information into your system, right? So like it saved them easily 40 hours a month, which is awesome, right? Just because they weren't printing, scanning, blah, blah, blah. It's just a mess, right?
Yeah. Love that framing, right? Because again, like you're in the web space. I was in the web space for a long time. I think it's easy for us and people like us, maybe some of the listeners, to think like, well, of course you would use a web form, right? But like, there are businesses who like they've always done it a certain way and they continue to do it that way. And the website can be a huge asset to, like you said, save 40 hours a month. That's huge. That's a work week a month.
And it can do really simple things. Like you can have it set an appointment for you. You can have it, frequently asked questions. I know it seems so simple, but if people keep calling in over and over again with the exact same questions and you're making them sit on hold to get them answered, you can put in your hold message, answers to commonly asked questions like A, B, and C are available on our website at blottyblah.com and just send them over there, right? It's not hard, and that saves you time, and it makes your staff members happy because they don't have to answer all those stupid questions on the phone. They're not stupid, okay? They just feel frustrating when it's the 17th time that you've answered them that day.
Right. You and I are both parents, right? I have small kids. You have had small kids. We know how frustrating it could be to get the same question over and over and over again, even though you just answered it, right?
Yes.
And so sadly, there's not an FAQs for children. Anybody who can invent that will be a billionaire. But yeah, it's really great to have a resource. I actually encountered like a useful chatbot recently because like I was, I just try to say like the stuff to get me to an actual person, but the chatbot deftly answered the question I was having. I was really impressed. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I don't have to explain my problem to a person and then be like, no, can you just escalate me to the person who can actually answer my question? It was delightful. I was surprised and delighted.
I had an experience like that with my utilities company recently, and they had actually an intelligent chatbot that searched the information inside the site better than a search feature would have done it, and then rephrased it and spit it back out to me. And I was like, hey, this is good. It like said, hey, I don't find this referenced anywhere in the site. So at this point, I would say that you don't have to worry about it, but you can contact these people if you want to talk to them now. And I'm like, hey, I guess I'll just see if they're going to charge me for using my credit card to pay for my utilities on the first bill and then move on. But I thought it was really nice because it was an intelligent chatbot. Now, the ones that are just completely stupid, I'm like, I wish that you would just not. Like, 'cause sometimes I really do want to talk to a real person and I get the chatbot and they just keep sending me back to the exact same resource that I've already found myself and read entirely, and it's missing steps like 7 and 8.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm trying to get through step 10. It's like, please don't send me back there. So I think that there's all kinds of other ways that you can really simply, like what I tell people to do is when you're wondering, what can I solve through my website? I tell you to just keep a log. What are you doing during the day that feels repetitious, that makes you bored, that you're is very detail oriented. Like it has to be done just this exact way. And if it's those things, it could potentially be started through your website and then automated using other systems or even pushed into a system that you have. So it could be as simple as someone fills out a form and then you have to resubmit that information into another system. What? Or like people are trying to sign up for your email list. Yeah, they should go in. Yeah. Or you're like, oh, well, now I have to segment the people in my email list. No, segment them from the website. So just think about the things that you're doing that are like, ugh, this is demotivating to me. And then ask yourself, is there a way that I could solve this problem on intake by adding a feature to my website and make the website actually do a job instead of just show up for work dressed nice, you know?
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to share, I think, what is a really good example of what you're talking about. Because I think sometimes I'm like, am I being extra by doing this? And like maybe a little, but also it's really improved my process. And you went through it, right? When you filled out the form to book a time, right? You didn't just go straight to Calendly. You went through a Gravity form. Mm-hmm. But then all of the information you filled out on that form was passed to Calendly, right? So I didn't make you fill out two forms. And I captured your information in my system, including a headshot, because that's always...
You can't do that in Calendly.
You can't do that in Calendly, right? And it's like really, you're going to get an email after this interview saying like, hey, thanks for being on the show. Upload your headshot to this Dropbox. But like maybe 20% of people do that versus like 80% who do it on the front end when they're filling out the form, right? And so... yeah, that's like my website. It's a Gravity form. And if you get one link, it'll show you like if you've been invited versus if you're just applying, you'll get like a different set of questions.
Yeah.
And like that, again, that feels extra, but like it's a really nice touch when I send somebody who I'm personally reaching out to and inviting and saying like, hey, will you come on my podcast? There are a lot of questions on this form. Most of them are already filled out and you just need to check the information and pick a time. Right? Versus like, here's a wall of questions that's going to take you 10 minutes to come on my show. Do this to do me a favor, right? Like,
and then I ask if they're even going to read them. Like, right. Man, how do they read this?
Yeah. So it's like, also, I'm just going to say here, I never ask people like what I should ask you. That's my job to figure out. I'm just draw a line in the sand there. So I really like what you're saying here, right? Because I think people will hear, oh, well, like you need to make your website do jobs for you or like you need to automate stuff. And they immediately think, well, I'm just going to have to use Zapier, right? When your website can offer a bunch of different options for you first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of ways. And I always look for the way that doesn't include Zapier first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I don't have a gajillion Zaps set up to help me run through parts of my business because Zapier is a really awesome tool, but Zapier also will error and then you won't figure out that it errored until later. And that stinks. And so I always look for, can I solve this problem in a way that two systems can natively talk to one another? Because if I can get them to natively talk to one another instead of putting a third-party processor in the middle of it, my life is just so much easier. You always, and especially as somebody who would like advise people or set it up for them, I always think, oh yeah, that can happen. But it's like, no, actually it can't. Like, I know that sounds strange, but like in Zapier, you can't look up a folder by the folder ID number. Yeah, I just found that out on Friday. You know how frustrated I was? All the client folders are made through an automation. And now I can't look them up unless they're in that exact same automation because I can only look them up by name. And the way that we use so I'm going anyway. It's like you just didn't know. You thought it would work and it really doesn't. But when two things like natively like combine using an API, it is usually so much better and less painful. You're still going to have to figure out that learning curve, but it's also easier for someone who's not a programmer to do it, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to hear, Monica, I'm going to ask you about this in the Accelerated, the Pro Show. So if you want to hear the rest of that like techie automation thing, you can sign up over at streamlined.fm/join become a member, you'll get this and every episode ad-free and extended. So be on the lookout for that. I made a note, so I'm definitely going to remember. But you're right? It kind of reminds me of my favorite show growing up was Friends. And there was an episode where it was Monica and Ross were like throwing a ball. And Chandler wanted to join. And they're like, no, Chandler's the dropper. If someone listening, if I'm getting the wrong people, it's unlikely, but if I am, let me know. They're like, Chandler's drops things, right? That's almost how I feel about introducing a third-party tool like Zapier, right? It's like, we're sharing data pretty good, right? My WordPress site talks to this other thing through an API. Now, if I introduce Zapier, what happens if it drops things, right? Or if I configure it wrong, right? I spent 1 month wondering why I wasn't getting any email subscribers, and you know what was happening? I set up a native like cadence block like a form in my builder. And then I used Zapier to send that information to ConvertKit because I could capture the referring URL, which ConvertKit doesn't let you do, which just really hurts me physically. And I forgot to turn the Zapier part on. And I know what some people are thinking. Well, if you were using like Gravity Forms or Ninja Forms, right, or some Forms plugin, but it was storing it in WordPress, right? No, I was just using like some bespoke form, and I'm like, skip the save, just send it over to ConvertKit. And so that was like, I mean, I'm a dum-dum, but like if I had just do what I do now, which is use Gravity Forms and their ConvertKit API add-on thing.
Yep.
I know that I'm not losing subscribers. And if there's like a day or a month where I'm like, hey, nobody signed up, I can go into Gravity Forms and be like, yes, I have that information here in my WordPress site.
Well, and if you map one stupid thing wrong, you've got stuff everywhere that wasn't meant to be there. And
right.
And it stinks. And we actually switched our email system because like we use Formidable Forms and we were using MailerLite. So I had to have a Zap for every single form on the site. And eventually it was just completely convoluted. And also MailerLite didn't allow like tagging. And so then everybody's profiles were getting huge, right? Because the only way I could pass the information through was through a Zap into their actual profile information. It was just convoluted at that point. And so we stepped back and we decided to go with Active Campaign, which some days I kick myself because of, and some days I'm happy because of, but it automatically integrates with Formidable. So every time a form submits, it doesn't have another thing that it has to go through. And like the other tricky thing is you want your website to load quickly. And every time that I put a Zap on top of a form, it loads slower. And there's some forms that are triggering multiple Zaps to automate stuff. And then it goes slower and slower to submit the form. And that's not what you want for visitors either, because they have like this like caveman brain that's telling them something's wrong, evacuate the premises, like a dinosaur is going to eat me because it's taking too long. And really you're just asking that third-party processor to do its job, and it's just going to take a second. Whereas if it's like integrated natively, it's not going to take as long generally. Right.
Yeah, or like at least the user will get some like positive feedback more quickly, right?
Yes, not just the loading forever symbol. That thing stinks.
Yeah, I ordered, so like one of my favorite games ever, Devil May Cry, was on sale on Microsoft yesterday. Okay. On Xbox. And so like, I'm like, oh great. Like it's like this $60 game is currently $15. Gonna buy it. My wife's going away for the weekend. I'm gonna have video game time, right? I won't, but I tell myself I will, because I will have 2 of my 3 children still home with me.
I was gonna ask, is she taking the kids or not? Because your kids are small enough, your video game time might be limited to after they go to bed.
Yes, she's taking 1. And both of my kids, like, thank the gods, still nap at the same time. So if the Yanks aren't on, I'll maybe be playing some video games. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I know I'm very lucky, but I clicked buy and then like the screen kind of went blurry and I didn't even get a loading thing. And I'm like, is this going through? If I click buy again or reload the site, is my card going to get charged? And like probably 5 seconds went by and then it was like, oh yeah, okay, you did it. It's in your library now. And I got an email, but I'm like, this was a very weird experience from a megacorp that sells a lot of stuff on this website. Like, it was just a very strange experience.
Well, and we all understand that that's not acceptable from like an employee, right? Like if your receptionist waited until the 12th ring to answer the phone and then was like, ugh, hey.
Right.
No, I don't know where he is right now. Like you would never put up with that crap.
Right.
Ever. And so I tell people, like, think of your website like an employee. If you wouldn't put up with it from an employee, then you shouldn't put up with it from your website. Your website should do its job. And so by that website blurring out and not acting like a normal website, it didn't do its job.
Right.
It was like a lazy intern, just like phoning it in, right? And so your website shouldn't make people feel like that. It should be like, that's part of a website doing its job, is loading quickly, being easy to find, solving problems for you. That makes it an employee of yours and a working member of your team. So if you just reframe it into, this is a working member of my team, this is an employee. If the employee were giving you a bunch of crap, you would fire it. But people don't fire their websites nearly as like quickly as they would fire an employee, which is really saying something, right? Because we do not like to fire people as entrepreneurs. No, this is not any fun. Then we're gonna have to do part of their job, right? But they just let this website thing go on forever. Yeah. And it sucks. So fire it if it's not doing its job. Because the pain is worth the outcome.
Right. And I think like reframing it that way is super important, because like if your website is not performing the way it should, then you're doing your website's job anyway, right? You just don't think of it that way.
Or you're losing business, so you can't do as much of your job. Because
and you could have if your receptionist is rude to a customer, you will hear about it somehow, right?
Or if your project managers are not actually answering their email, or if the, tradesperson that you have working on something, be it a line of code or installing a floor, don't do it correctly. That reflects poorly upon your business. People aren't going to send you a referral. Right. That's how small businesses grow, right? Is by doing a great job for someone and having someone become a raving fan. And then, it all grows up. But if your website is a barrier of entry instead of a welcome mat, then it's not doing its job. Yeah. Whatever, even if it's the simplest job, it's still not doing it.
And you may never hear about that either. Like, that's when nobody was signing up for my mailing list. I had no idea until it went on long enough that even I thought it was strange. And I investigated it. Like, my website wasn't like, hey, no one's joined your mailing list in a while. Doesn't that feel weird? Right?
That's why you have to track crap. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Or like people who signed up and filled out a form and was like, you're in. Nobody emailed me and was like, hey, I haven't gotten an email from you in a while. They were just like, oh, I guess Joe never emails his list, right? Like that's sorry to the 30 people probably who signed up and never heard from me, right?
Well, or we did an online training. We spent so much energy promoting this training. Like, it literally consumed me for probably 2 months leading up to it, because it was a new thing that we were launching, and we sent out all the emails. We did all the stuff. Oh, do you know that the sign up form the autoresponder, none of the emails, the person that sent out the emails and I did not check, sent everyone the wrong link to join.
Oh, man.
So the online training, no one showed up for except for 3 people, because one of my friends was like, hey, I'm trying to join this. They're my client, but they're my friend. They were like, I'm trying to join this training. Did you know that this link has not worked for weeks? I was like,
oh, man.
Yeah, they're definitely, I put a checkbox in that standard operating procedure, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As what you're describing with your email list. No one told me that the link was wrong until no one showed up.
Right.
And then I'm panicking, and I'm supposed to be going into sales mode, and real hard to sell from panic mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's lame.
Well, I feel that. I think a lot of the listeners are feeling that too. And so they probably are wondering if it's even worth it. And we're definitely going to adjust that. But first, we are going to take a quick break for our sponsors. Look, when you have an online-based business, speed and reliability are the most important aspects of a service. Not far behind that is actually owning the website that your business relies on. When you own your website, you're not subject to an algorithm, changing terms, or accidental shutdowns. That's why I'm so excited that Liquid Web is back as a sponsor of How I Built It this year. Their Cloud VPS is some of the best in-class hosting you can get when your business relies on your website. From speed to security and protection to regular backups, with Liquid Web, you can trust your website will remain in tip-top shape. Not technically savvy? Don't worry. Liquid Web offers fully managed hosting, which means they have a team of knowledgeable experts looking after your website for you, so you can focus on running your business. If you need fast, reliable, and secure hosting for your business, check out Liquid Web. Head over to howibuilt.it/liquidweb today. I've had a sordid past with membership platforms. I've never really been happy with one because I've always had to jump through hoops to get things working. Then I found Memberful. Memberful has everything you need to get your membership program up and running quickly. Content gating, newsletters, community spaces, private podcasts, and more. I love the private podcast feature. Since my host doesn't have a payment gateway, I need to figure out a different way to sell it. Memberful can handle sales and management for me. Plus, you know I love automations, and Memberful integrates with a ton of services. They even have webhooks and support custom apps. It's the central place for every aspect of your membership. My membership is on pause, but you can bet that when I launch it again, it will be on Memberful. You can get started today for free at memberful.com/streamlined. You don't pay until you start collecting payments. That's memberful.com/streamlined. Hey, real quick before we get back into the episode, I want to tell you about my free newsletter, Podcast Workflows. If you are wondering how I can successfully run this show, plus 2 other shows, plus run a business, plus run 3 children, Podcast Workflows is for you. You will get weekly emails with behind-the-scenes look on how I produce this show, experiments I am trying with other podcasts, and general advice to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. You'll also have the opportunity to become a member and get ad-free extended episodes of this show as well as bonus content. You can do all of that over at podcastworkflows.com/join. That's podcastworkflows.com/join. Sign up for free today. And we're back. All right. So, Monica, we talked about what a website is and why it's important and why it should do some jobs. But then we kind of left things before the break with in a little horror story land, right? It kind of makes me not want to have a website. Can't I just rely on social media or my Google storefront page or whatever? Isn't LinkedIn or Facebook sufficient?
Okay, so I have a couple different opinions on this actually, because it all depends on your situation, right? But you can ask yourself a few questions to answer whether or not you need a website. The first one is, do you want to show up on Google for more than just your Facebook page, right? So the tricky thing about not having a website and just having social media is when you search on Google, social media posts do not show up in search results. The posts themselves do not show up in search results. And the average life of a social media post is only 8 hours at this point in time. So you put all this effort into putting stuff out there, only 8 hours, and it's not going to show to your entire audience. It's going to maybe 20%. That would be great if it showed to 20% of your audience, right?
I feel 20% is real good on some platforms at least.
Exactly. And so And it's not going to show up in Google. And think about how people use Google. So people use Google to solve problems. And when people enter into the buying cycle, they're trying to solve a problem that your business solves. But if all you have is social media, then yes, your Facebook page or your LinkedIn profile might show up, but it's not going to show up with the answer to their problem. So when they're searching, for plumbers near me, it's probably not going to show up. It just doesn't. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. So that website, it will show up. The pages on your website will show up. The blog posts on your website will show up. It all shows up in search engines. And so does a YouTube video or a PDF, but only if it's hosted on your website most of the time. So all those things are really awesome. And then the second piece might not be the second piece, but let's say it's the third piece that I tell people to think about is that if you've been on Facebook or any of these social media platforms long enough, you know that they change. They shift their algorithms to benefit themselves and their advertising dollars. They're privately held companies. That's what they're trying to do. So if all you have is a Facebook page, and this happened back in probably 2021, my nonprofits, we did social media management at the time. They all had incredible engagement on their Facebook pages. Everything got seen and liked and, commented on. And then Facebook switched their algorithm. And suddenly none of that stuff showed up for those people anymore. So at that point, you had to rely on another asset to be able to promote your company. You can't control the way that those businesses decide to unfold their next move. And you also can't control the way that they display your content. So if you're a control freak, you need a website. And if you want to grow your business and show up for people when they're ready to buy stuff, then you have to have a website too. It's yay!
Yeah. Your point about social media having a shelf life of 8 hours. I had a guest on a couple years ago who said on Twitter, it was 21 minutes. That really stayed with me. And I'm I'm going to tweet this and people are going to see it for 20 minutes and then never see it again. And that rang true for a long time. Unless someone
you spent
retweets
20 minutes probably crafting this thing, right? If you're especially if you're doing a graphic with it, it could be even longer.
Yeah.
And people just it's not there. It's gone.
Right.
They're not going to see it. I think that you need to do social media as a business so you don't look like you're dead. But because that's bad. Also, if people are thinking about doing business with you and they can't find any updated content anywhere and your website looks like it was built in 1998, then that's also your website's not doing its job then, right? Because it's not promoting your best, storefront.
Right.
And then they get to watch the social media. They don't see anything about you. How do you even exist? You look like you don't exist and things are just shut down. Now, I have found for some local businesses that are really small in small communities that are very Facebook driven. So I live in a small community in the Midwest, in a very Facebook driven community, which means I'm out of the loop all the time until the other moms tell me what's going on because I'm not on Facebook. They're well, we put it on Facebook. And I'm yeah, not going to find it. I'm not there. Anyway, but there are some very small businesses here that these people are solopreneurs. All they do is just this one thing. They're super busy. They put a word out on Facebook and they're fine, right?
Yeah.
But they're not trying to grow their business. They're just doing what they're doing.
Right.
And it can be fine like that too. I do find also that I have started seeing LinkedIn almost like newsletters.
Yeah.
But they're not newsletters. They're posts.
Right.
Not the post, but there's something else, articles. That's what they are. LinkedIn articles are starting to show up in Google search now.
Oh, nice.
So if you're not going to blog on your website, you could potentially do it on LinkedIn and then still get it shown in search results. I don't know why Google's doing that.
Until they change it, right?
Well, until Google decides to change.
On the same token, right? When one of the things that Elon did shortly after he bought Twitter was accidentally paywall everything, right? And so for 12 hours, nothing from Twitter was showing up in Google, right? Just wholesale blocked robots, right? Or no robot.txt or whatever. And so if you were hoping, right, that like some of your content somehow made it somewhere, and you were relying on Twitter. Like it just wasn't. It was full wholesale walled garden at that point, right? And yeah, like a website host could technically shut you down, but that is extremely unlikely.
I feel like even if you put all your eggs for people finding you into your Google business profile because you're a local business and that is really powerful for you, Google's still looking at all the pieces to decide if you actually do what you say you do, and your website is part of that piece. And so I just feel like if what you're trying to do is grow your business and meet new people and sell things, you just have to have a website. It's like a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing that people do.
Yeah. I agree. Especially I've talked about this a few times on this show now recently, but like the past year, like January 2023, I was like, I'm going all in on LinkedIn. It's going to be great. And it was great for like 3 months. And then LinkedIn was like, wait a minute, we're going to change stuff. And like engagement tanked. And I'm like, is it worth it? It's not. So now I just publish everything on my website and I will syndicate, copy and paste it in some cases to other places. But yeah, website, one source of truth.
I heard a really good analogy the other day. I was in a training that Jenna Kutcher was doing, and she said that some marketing mediums are like annuals, and like a plant that you have to plant every single year. And then some of them are perennials and they come back every single year. And as someone who has a degree in agriculture, that really struck me as extremely true. Because like I go to the plant store and I only buy perennials. Like I buy a few annuals every year because I understand that I want to have like bright, big plants in certain parts of my garden. But my goal is to have plants that come back every single year. And here's the deal. Not all of those plants come back every single year. Something can happen. There's deer. They eat stuff. They suck. But, and so some of it's going to fall flat. But usually at least half of it makes it to the next year. And it's the exact same thing with your marketing. So when you're doing social media, you're planting those annual flowers. They're going to be there and you know they're not coming back. You're not going to enjoy them the following year. When you do things like even posting on Pinterest, which is more like a search engine, or YouTube or blogging or podcasting, these are things that live forever. And so they're your perennials that people can find year after year that come up and bloom. Now, not all of them are going to be awesome. They're not all going to explode.
Right.
Some of them are going to fall flat because the deer ate them. Yeah. And that is what it is. But if you nurture them and take care of them right and keep the deer out of them, then they're great forms of marketing. And so my values are in perennial marketing, which is why I love websites.
I love that. Oh, that's so good. Okay, I think you've probably convinced us at this point, right? Like we need a website, right?
We even have flower analogies.
We have flower and we have farmers market analogies. we're covering the gambit here, right?
Yes.
So we also live in like a DIY world. And a good website is like hard to make, right?
It can be. I mean, I think it just depends on what you're going after. So one of the things that we did last year was create a program where we helped people set up their templates, work with a professional designer, and then gave them all the videos and tutorials and like downloadable resources that they needed to finish out the rest of their website.
Wow.
Which was a powerful asset for us because now we can work with a smaller business owner and help guide them through it. I feel like as a business owner, there are certain things about building a website that if you learned how to do them, it would not be lost. Like that information would be powerful for you. Like you should know how to update your website. You shouldn't feel like you can't go up and put your hours up today because you're going to be closed early, right? Or if you're going to be closed on a holiday. You should know how to add a blog post or take a staff member off of your page. That gives you power, like gives you control, and it allows you to get things done quickly when they need to be done quickly. So, but then there's also things that have to be done only one time. And so my belief as a business owner is the things that only have to be done one time, I'm perfectly happy with asking someone to help me with because I only have to do them one time, right? And so like with your website, setting up the template, getting all the branding right, getting the styling and everything right to match your like brand and make it easy to use even, right? Those are things that I think you can ask a professional to help you with, and it's not a bad investment. Because you don't need to know how to do them again for like 3 or 4 years, to be fair. So why spend all your time learning how to do something when you could invest it learning how to do something else that is a perennial? It's the annual versus perennials again.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And we'll talk more about kind of platforms in the accelerated show. But we're both WordPress people. In fact, in the pre-show, before we started recording, I learned that you host with our current sponsor, Liquid Web.
Yes.
So very exciting. My friends, definitely check out Liquid Web. There'll be a link in the show notes. WordPress, I started using WordPress in 2004, which is like a year after it launched. It's changed a lot. And I can't tell if I'm like being a crotchety old man now by being like, the site editor is hard. It's not what I know, versus if it's actually getting harder. So I guess the one question I'll ask for the free show, the amuse-bouche, I guess, of our pro show discussion is do you think WordPress is the best platform for most people, given everything we've talked about so far?
I think it depends on what you need your site to do. If you really do just need an easy website that has a contact form on it and a frequently asked questions section, or you need to like integrate a Calendly sign up, something like that you can just put in an iframe, then you could use about any builder. Like some of them are crappy and slow and they just suck.
Right.
But there's others that optimize well, and I wish I could find something wrong with them, but I can't. And so and I keep digging and I don't find it. But then you're going to hit a wall most of the time. If you are a problem solver and you are growing your business, you will often hit a wall in a platform that isn't WordPress, because WordPress has, I don't even know, thousands of plugins. And like, I actually did an article about it. I wish I could remember the exact number, but Squarespace, which is definitely a competitor, right? They only have like 50 or something like that. So it's like the extendability is very limiting. And I think it really sucks because people come to me and they're like, oh, I really need this website to be able to do this because it's such a drain on my staff. And then I look at everything and I'm like, I'm sorry, it can't happen in this platform.
Yeah.
Like they literally can't talk to one another. And so I really just think you need to look at what you want to do with your website. And if it's going to be above and beyond, or if you want to extend it in the future, then you're going to want to use the system that allows you to extend it. And that system for me is WordPress. Now, it just is what it is.
Yeah. I think about it a lot like renting versus owning, right? Like
exactly. Yes.
When you're like fresh out of college, right, and you just like need a place to sleep, like get an apartment. Like don't worry about the HVAC. Which, like, if it goes, like, it's going to zap the savings you don't have yet. But, like, when you're ready and you need multiple rooms because you have kids, or, like, you want to have a garden, or put, like, an extension, right? Or, like, paint the walls in some cases, right? Then you're going to need a house. So I think about that a lot. I was really bullish in November about Substack for, like, my membership and everything. Because I was like, oh man, like Substack, like they were going through like a PR nightmare at the time. So like my timing was just perfect. But I was like, oh, this does everything like really well. And then I noticed that they had 0 integrations. Like I couldn't pull in an RSS feed. I couldn't Zapier or make.com anything. And I was like, this may not work for me. Like the fact that it can't integrate. And like if you are a journalist or a creator who just needs the one platform and it'll make your life easier, fine, right? But like I have a lot of stuff in, the big thing for me was like, it would be great if people who signed up for my ConvertKit mailing list also got subscribed to Substack or vice versa. Either one is fine. And Substack was like, nah, we don't do that. You can export all of your data. And I'm like, so I'm going to manually export the 3 people who are signing up for my Substack every week? Like doesn't feel worth it.
No.
So
it feels terrible.
Right.
That's that redundant thing where I'm like, what is the thing that you have to do that you're like, this is a complete waste of my time.
Yeah.
My 12-year-old could do this. And yeah. But having said that, not everybody like needs WordPress. Right. And so, and if you are trying to build something really big in WordPress and you're working with someone who's really new to WordPress, okay, that's tricky because they don't know WordPress really either, right? And so we inherit a lot of websites that someone who's very new to WordPress, they were solving problems the best way that they knew how, but then the website was basically programmed into a corner and the client's like, oh, we shouldn't use WordPress. Look, it's so crappy. And I'm like, well, it's only as good as the human behind it, right? Like, so if you solve a problem this one way and it doesn't allow you to extend it anymore, then that wasn't the right way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So if you are trying to do something really big with WordPress, you should work with someone who this is not their first rodeo, or else it is not going to turn out well.
Yeah.
There you go. That's my disclaimer.
Here. Agree. Like nothing will cost you more than an amateur web developer, right? Like
100%.
Yeah. Or like I always got, this one always confused me when I was doing web development work. My web developer just disappeared on me. And I'm like, how many people, I hear this so much. How does this happen? I have never ghosted a single person who has given me money for anything. And
to the point of like, you should have. You know what I mean?
Like
there's times
fault.
where you're like, why am I still answering this phone call? Like I haven't charged this person in years, but they're calling me, so I must talk to them because once upon a time they paid me to do this one thing for them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I had a really good discussion with my friend Natalie Lucier, episode 405 over at streamline.fm/405 about how we were both at the time taking a bet on like Substack because of the network effect, right? Like a big drawback of WordPress outside of search engines, right, is like there is no recommendation for WordPress sites, right? Whereas with Substack there is, but these are considerations that you're going to have. What are you prioritizing? If you're only writing on Substack, then that's fine. But like, I was already maintaining a different list and I had a website. And like in the meantime, ConvertKit's WordPress plugin is getting better to the point where like I can now create a ConvertKit broadcast from any post that I publish on my website, which is super neat, right? And so it really depends on what you need and like you said, Monica, like what your priorities are.
And I think even when you're picking those systems like ConvertKit or like the membership system that you were looking at, oh man, really just look at them with the end in mind because it is so incredibly time consuming to switch. When I switched like email service providers or email marketing companies, I felt I was never going to dig myself out of that hole. You can't just export an automation from MailChimp or MailerLite and import it over into active campaign. It doesn't happen.
Right.
I mean, as web developers, we're like, oh yeah, sure. You got a database. We'll export it. We'll clean it up. We'll re-import it. Like, is it going to be perfect? No, but it's going to be close. And no, this does not happen with those other systems. And I literally felt buried for months when we switched because I had to recreate everything.
Yeah.
So just even if it's a little bit more expensive, if doing a bunch of marketing and email segmenting or anything, right, whatever it is that you want to do with your marketing and your business, just really make sure that you think it through. And even if it's a little bit more expensive, pick the system that'll let you do it so you don't have to switch it later.
Yeah.
Future you will thank today's you.
Yeah. Like future me hates past me, right? Like, because I did the same thing. I'm like, I do that thing where I'm like, well, I'm a web developer and I know how web developers work, and surely they would build this thing that I need, right? Like, and so my membership, like, I've switched so many platforms so many times. And like one time I was like, I'm just going to super simplify, like ConvertKit Commerce. They sell subscriptions and they have an integration where like people can automatically subscribe to my members only podcast feed when they buy it. That's perfect, right? And then someone churned and didn't lose access. And I was like, hey, ConvertKit, like, how do I kick off an automation when someone stops paying? And they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, that's so weird. That feels like a top 5 feature for like a subscription-based product, right?
You can even do it like using Formidable.
Right. Right. And so
that's a form builder, not like.
Yeah. And I'm like, how do you have the automation coming in and not going out? Right. Like, and so I was like, you know what? Like, I sunsetted my membership for the most part. It's just this pro show now, or the pro show now. But and full disclosure, they are a current sponsor. But like Memberful feels like the way for me to go because it's like a thing that integrates tightly with WordPress that also sits outside of WordPress. And I really like that. So, I mean, there's lots of great WordPress membership plugins. I'm really good friends with the Paid Memberships Pro folks.
But there's some power in having your membership outside of your WordPress site, even in just security. Because if you're going to spend all this energy building up your WordPress site and then suddenly you invite in hundreds of members that are going to have some level of access, you know that you're opening it up
right
to a lot of things, right? And so like my brain went, ooh, if you're going to have hundreds of members, like that actually seems like not the best plan, or not the worst plan. Sorry, said it backwards. But because just from a consistency and a security standpoint, you're not opening the door to as many people in your website, which means less people that can get exploited.
Right.
Less users.
Right.
I love hackers.
Yeah. Okay, so this has been really good. We've been talking for a while. Let's wrap things up for the main show before we get into the pro show. How do we, you touched on this a little bit earlier, how do we make the website part of our team? Like, where should our listeners spend their time if they're like, yes, I need to do more of this? What's like the first couple of steps they should do?
I think first you have to identify the time sucks in your business, right? The things that are repetitive and yucky. So you're looking for the things where you feel like the bridge is broken, either in your own processes or in communicating with clients or potential clients, right? And then from there, you would move on to ask the question, can my website solve this problem? And if the answer is potentially, then you got to start researching and see how. And that's the long and the short of it. And there's a lot of systems out there that natively integrate with websites. And then there's, God forbid, Zapier. Like, I'm telling you, I have so many Zaps, so I can't even say God forbid Zapier. But yeah, so that's it. And then I would suggest like prioritizing that list of things and do one, let it go for a little while, see how broken it is, fix it, and then move on to the next one, right? Because I don't know about you, Joe, but like with my podcast intake process, it didn't start out the way it is today. It started out way simpler, right? And then you're like, okay, well, okay, so that broke and then I fixed it and now it's good. Okay, now what if I could do this other thing for me? Okay, let's try that. And then that broke and then I fixed it and now it's okay, right? So just don't do them all at once.
Yeah.
You'll explode yourself.
This is exactly what I tell my clients. Like they look at my my whole podcast automation process and they're like, I can never do that. And I'm like, I've been podcasting for a decade. I didn't build all of this on day one, right? I built this over 10 years. And so really, I think really smart, really important. Identify the time sucks is like the really important part there, right? And the research part, this is the thing that I don't always do the best because I make like hubris-laden assumptions. But I interviewed my friend Karanda Adair on the show a couple of years ago now, episode 303. But she said treat software like when you research software, act like you're interviewing a candidate for a job.
Yes.
Right? And like it's the same thing you're saying, right? Like treat your website like an employee. So what questions, right? What tasks, what jobs to be done, right?
Define your non-negotiables with that software. And then I create a stinking spreadsheet. And I am a very visual person, so I have to take a screenshot of it. And then I link back to it. And then I take notes like pros and cons, what I think would be really cool. Yeah. And then after that, I narrow it down to just 2 or 3. I'm like, can I make a free account on it? I make a free account and I spend maybe 15 to 20 minutes in it. I'm not spending forever.
Right.
But I try to go in and I try to do the tasks that I'm going to do most often in the system. And if it feels like it sucks, I get out of there. And that's how I ended up not using ConvertKit because I was building emails in there, which is something that I do really regularly. And I was like, why do I feel like my head is exploding right now? Like I know how to build. I could code this email. I could code it and it would be done. Why is this so hard? And so then I was like, I'm just done. I'm walking away. And then I tried some other ones and ended up in ActiveCampaign, which, has its own drawbacks. But
as a sidebar, like when did you use it?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to defend it either way, but
3 years ago.
Okay. So they have changed it.
Good for them.
I'm not convinced it's for the better though.
Oh no.
It's definitely better in a lot of ways, but I've given them this feedback. I love ConvertKit. I love the people at ConvertKit. They're super nice. But there's a couple of things where I'm like, I don't understand the decision that you made here. And I feel like I understand more than most the software development process. But it's just someone recently was easiest way to write an article and send a newsletter, right? Or the easiest way to do a newsletter, go. And I'm like, easiest? Substack. It's free to you only pay when someone pays you. It's a super simple editor. You don't have to mess with templates. It sends you. And they're like, are you trolling? And I'm like, I am not. I love ConvertKit. But if you only need to send emails, ConvertKit ain't it. ConvertKit is there for the automations.
All the other things.
Yes. Yeah. So I feel you on that. I really like ConvertKit for a lot of things, and I have considered moving to other places, and I'm just I can't. There's a lot of things that are really good about it that keep me there.
I pretty much just feel like I'm over a barrel. I probably won't switch from ActiveCampaign until I retire.
Right, yeah, right.
But I do have to say that they do, over the last 3 years, have rolled out some really nice, I liked their email builder. It was pretty simple to begin with, but they keep rolling out new things for it. And I think it's easier to use with each rollout. And I mean, yeah, I think that's excellent. So I'm not going to complain about it. It integrates with my form building plugin.
Yep.
So that's a powerful thing too. I just,
Yeah. The beautiful thing about software is that it could always get better.
Yep.
And so this is, gosh, was I just talking to somebody else about this on this podcast? Maybe I was on their podcast talking about this. But either way, Monica, this has been I love these conversations. And I think we have really good advice for we got a little technical. but we have a lot of really good advice for the non-technical folks. So if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
They can go over to mayecreate.com. That's MAYECREATE.com. We also have a podcast. It's called Marketing with Purpose, and you can find that at podcast.mayecreate.com.
Love that. I will link to that and everything. This is going to be a link-rich show notes page, which you can find in the description of wherever you're listening to this now, or over at streamlined.fm/417. Monica, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening. Thanks to our sponsors. And until next time, I'll see you out there.